And on Saturday night, I did a live stream crediting Pam Bondi for doing good work for once in the administration. And now it looks like we're back to default settings. She made a huge mistake in the prosecutions of James Comey and Letitia James that today led to the dismissal, the complete dismissal of the indictments that we worked so hard for. One of the central promises of the Trump campaign was accountability, putting people in jail who deserved to be, not going after political opponents for the sake of it like Merrick Garland's DOJ did to Donald Trump in the 4 years the Biden regime was in the White House occupying it. So it really mattered to us all who the Attorney General was. It couldn't be a weak person. So when President Trump nominated Matt Gaetz to the position, I literally recorded a video of myself jumping in this very room because of how excited I was that someone competent and someone who understood lawfare was going to take the position of Attorney General, a competent person. Matt Gaetz would have been one of the greatest attorney generals in American history. He would have been consequential. The confirmation process started. I got put into a war room on X to promote Matt Gaetz to make sure his confirmation went through, to put pressure on senators using the patriots that follow me on X to keep the fire on these senators. Matt Gaetz engaged in the confirmation process, flanked by Charlie Kirk, who did everything in his power to support him behind the scenes. And then it became apparent that the GOP establishment was not going to allow Matt Gaetz to become U.S. Attorney General. Matt Gaetz dropped his entire life, essentially. He gave up his seat in Congress and said, all right, I'm going to focus on getting confirmed for President Trump. I thought it was one of the most important nominations the president has ever made, alongside Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and everybody else. But GOP senators just said no. They rejected the will of the people. They rejected Trump's mandate. You have to remember, there was a feeling after the GOP's victory in that election last year that the people gave Trump a mandate to transform the country. They gave him the popular vote. Republicans winning the popular vote has not really been a thing. Trump won in 2016 without the popular vote. So him winning the popular vote was a message from the people screaming that not only did we give him the Electoral College, we gave him the popular vote because we want him to go above and beyond to fulfill his promises. And as stated before, one of those central promises was putting people in jail. That's what Trump campaigned on in 2016, and that's what he relitigated in 2020, and that's what he brought back in 2024. Yet here we are with an attorney general who is no different from a generic Republican attorney general. And honestly, after the blunder with the James Comey case and the Letitia James case, I think she's worse. She's worse than a generic Republican attorney general. Because this feels like sabotage. It feels like she must have done this wanting to screw us up. It's not like Pam Bondi was inexperienced. If RFK Jr. made a mistake at HHS, I'd understand it because he's new. He's new to government. He's not really been in government his entire life. Pam Bondi was Attorney General in Florida for 8 years. There's no excuse to make the mistake she made, which has led us to this point. Let me explain. So Judge Cameron McGovern, a judge appointed by, I believe, Bill Clinton, ruled that the indictments brought forth by the DOJ in the Eastern District of Virginia by Lindsay Halligan, the acting U.S. attorney appointed by Bondi, are illegitimate because Halligan was unlawfully appointed. And if you look at the law, it's true, the judge was right. And I know everyone's like, it's a crooked judge once again, but this is happening because Pam Bondi did it. It's a blunder from her part. I don't blame the president. Trump is a very busy man. He was busy tariffing every country. So, it's really not up to him to, get U.S. attorneys in place and get prosecutors in place to keep everything smooth. That's why he nominated an attorney general. The president doesn't run the day-to-day operations of the Justice Department. Sometimes I wish he did, but he simply can't. There's just too much going on. So he entrusts an attorney general with that responsibility. And you would think Pam Bondi would go above and beyond to achieve that goal, yet here we are. So the judge said, no, according to U.S. law and the appointment clause, after a set period of time from a Senate-approved U.S. attorney getting kicked out by the incoming president, there's 120 days where an acting U.S. attorney can be appointed. And there was an acting U.S. attorney at that point who was not Senate confirmed, and then that guy left in May, and then Lindsey Halligan was installed after the 120-day deadline. That's why we're here. And if anyone's going to be like, oh, this is corrupt, we can't, look, we would be hypocrites if we didn't say this is just a blunder from Pam Bondi. We would be hypocritical because the entire argument against the existence of Jack Smith's witch hunt against the president was that Jack Smith was just unilaterally appointed by Merrick Garland with no Senate approval. John Durham, when he was appointed as special counsel to look over the Russia hoax, he was appointed by the Senate, which is hilarious because the Senate was controlled by Republicans and the White House was controlled by Republicans. And they allowed Durham to come in and investigate the Russia hoax. Durham was Senate approved, and so he had the power of special prosecutor. Jack Smith did not. He didn't get Senate approval. Merrick Garland just said, all right, cool, here you go. You're now special prosecutor. Go after Donald Trump. Go get him. And the reason they use special prosecutors as opposed to the DOJ in its namesake is because they don't want the appearance of political persecution. Yet that's exactly what it was. It was a political witch hunt. They went after Trump solely because he was their political opponent. And ultimately, they cost him a lot of money. He had to pay a lot of attorneys. Todd Blanche. Who's that chick from New Jersey? Alina Habba, yeah, her. The current U.S. attorney or acting attorney in New Jersey. He had to pay a lot of people to represent him in a billion different cases. And when those cases didn't work, they tried to kick him off the ballot. And he had to spend even more money on lawyers. And it's not like $100 an hour. These lawyers are the best of the best because you don't want to risk losing. So you pay the best lawyers. He was paying thousands of dollars every hour to all these lawyers across the country. And they were working 24/7 because crooked judges would make different decisions and then appeals needed to be made everywhere. And then the Supreme Court would have to hear it. And it took time and lots of resources and lots of money from Trump. So what Jack Smith and Merrick Garland did to Trump cannot be characterized as anything else. So to bring it to Pam Bondi, this now endangers the James Comey indictment. James Comey lied before Congress all the way back in 2020 in like September. 5 years ago, we have something in this country called the statute of limitations. You can't prosecute somebody for a crime more than 5 years ago. And guess what? Days before Pam Bondi dropped the indictment and the DOJ dropped it with Lindsey Halligan as the lead prosecutor, that statute of limitations was about to expire. And thankfully, they filed the indictment in time and got the grand jury to vote on it. So they were still within that 5-year period back in September whenever they filed the indictment. So that was good. But now you can see the conundrum we're in. Because of the unlawful appointment, now you have a dismissal on charges. And if the DOJ were to go and try and refile the charges, Do you see why there'd be a statute of limitations issue? Because the 5 years passed. It's now 5 years and what, 3 months, 2 months? So we are now boxed in. We can't get James Comey. Now, James Comey committed much larger crimes, but the problem with this country is you need something solid, something definitively true to get him. He lied to Congress, so it made sense to go after him for that. And because Lindsay Halligan was also prosecuting the Letitia James case, the same judge dismissed that as well, or a different judge, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, that case got dismissed. A little bit luckier with that because the crimes Letitia James committed with mortgage fraud and lying and defrauding the government and defrauding banks, which is what she accused Trump of, defrauding the banks, but she actually did it with her mortgage, where she's now housing her ghetto niece, who's probably on EBT. So that case is a little bit different because it happened a lot more recently, relatively speaking, and so they can refile the charges. So the DOJ will appeal this, of course, they'll appeal the decision. But where we're at now is we're screwed. I don't expect higher courts to sympathize with the DOJ's arguments. There's no question that after that 120-day deadline, the appointment of a U.S. attorney, of an acting U.S. attorney, lies with the federal courts. So the federal courts get to pick that judge or that attorney to represent the United States. And this is the bigger problem. Because, yeah, Bondi is one thing. She screwed this up. She should have been pushing for a legitimate appointment. The bigger problem, I think, is with Congress, the Senate. The Republican Senate was so focused on reconciliation because these stupid goons who are supposed to represent us can't agree on anything. They were so focused on that. And any other... Actually, honestly, that's not even a good excuse. The Senate has a lot of time. They can vote on many things in one day. They've proven that. They approved the Epstein discharge petition with unanimous consent. They can be fast if they want to. Especially if you're the party in power of the White House and in control of the House. The Senate could have moved fast if there was a nomination made for U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. But there was no nomination. Not sure why. And because there was no nomination, I bet it's because the administration knew that the Senate was going to take a long time anyways. Here we are in this screwed up situation. Is my phone ringing? Hope my phone isn't ringing and you guys can hear it, because it rings on my computer. So the Senate is too slow. You know, they're still appointing or approving Trump's nominations. They're still going through the process. And the Constitution gives the Senate a very specific role: advise and consent. It's not advise and then prevent nominees from getting through, like they did to Matt Gaetz. It's advise and consent, meaning you tell the person that is nominated, hey, do a good job, fight for the country. You try to steer their mindset going into office, and then you consent. It doesn't say don't consent. It says advise and consent. It's a very simple power and responsibility. And yes, of course, the Senate can vote no. If they are only allowed to vote yes, then why vote anyways? If yes is the only vote they're able to make, then it's just pointless. You might as well just say, all right, cool. Trump appointed you. All right, you're good. He nominated you. Cool. You're now in the Supreme Court. They have an important role. But the advise and consent role is a trust-based thing. It's you trust the president to nominate somebody competent and qualified. And then you give advice to that person and you consent to the nomination. But with these Senate Republicans, Trump will nominate somebody, and they're complaining, oh, he's not. They fought like heck to prevent RFK Jr. from getting through. fought like heck, even worse for Tulsi Gabbard, because she said Julian Assange should have been pardoned. And by the way, I don't know why Trump hasn't pardoned Julian Assange. We can take a break from pardoning rappers who commit crimes just because we need their economic activity with their concerts. Let's take a break from that for a second and pardon Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. Julian Assange is why 2016 was such a landslide for Trump. The WikiLeaks, no one remembers? If not for anything else, let's at least reward him for the valuable information he provided to the world, to the country, back then. But anyways, they fought like heck to prevent Tulsi Gabbard, to prevent even Kash Patel to a certain degree, although not as much as RFK Jr. and the others, and certainly not as much as Matt Gaetz, who ultimately couldn't even get through. And that nomination, whatever you make of Matt Gaetz, personally or whatever, he would have been the most consequential attorney general in history. He would, because he felt the lawfare. They made up a story about him. They tried to extort him and his family. He went through it. He went through DOJ investigations. Also a very talented attorney himself, so he understands the law. And he was able to get one of the biggest swamp creatures, the biggest hoe for lobbyist in D.C., Kevin McCarthy, kicked out of office. That's talent. And the way he articulated himself was impressive. So I think he would have been a consequential attorney general. Instead, we're stuck with someone who just doesn't seem to be thinking 5 steps ahead. Thinking, okay, what's going to happen if we indict Letitia James and Lindsay Halligan is the lead prosecutor? It's like there was no future-proofing of the prosecution. So now here we are with a dismissal. It's like she didn't want to get him anyways. It's like Trump just said, all right, get somebody, come on. You know, it was Polk, the Fannie Mae director, or the guy in that agency. He referred Letitia James for the mortgage fraud because it's under his jurisdiction. He deals with mortgages. He made that referral, and Bondi then ultimately, and the DOJ, of course, filed the charges. But it seems like they didn't know anything until Paul sent that referral over. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. She actually did want to prosecute them. Then why wasn't there enough thought on strategy, on foolproofing or dummy-proofing your indictment? You know the federal judges are going to get a say. You know these actors are going to file for dismissals, James Comey, Letitia James, and the others. I'm now terrified what's going to happen with the John Bolton case. Do we have a legitimate prosecutor for that? We better. We better not have an acting attorney. We better have a full-time U.S. attorney for that, U.S. prosecutor for that. Because John Bolton's case is the most foolproof case ever. He's seen in text messages saying there's a lot more where that came from, referring to classified information he was sharing to his friends and family and clients, the possible buyers of that information. Is that prosecution now in danger if we don't have the right prosecutor? Also, let's say by some miracle, the higher courts say, look, it doesn't change the nature of the crime, who the prosecutor is. The DOJ can substitute the prosecutor, and that's fine. Let's say the higher courts say that, which I'd be happy to hear. But this whole lawfare, this back and forth between Letitia James, James Comey, and the DOJ now creates a tainted jury pool, because those jurors that are going to be future jurors on those cases have read all this. They're aware that the case got dismissed, and it undermines the DOJ's case in their eyes. But look, I think Comey's case is so clear. I mean, he just lied. He lied about his knowledge of certain pieces of information to do with Russia. So he lied. He completely lied. So that whole thing is a foolproof case, but it really sucks. Now, the left will say, great, awesome. The retribution that Trump sought is not going to go his way. They're going to say that. But here's the thing. And some people on the right even say this. They say Trump shouldn't be focusing on retribution. He should unite the country. That's the same BS they told him about Hillary Clinton. Instead of putting her in jail for deleting tens of thousands of emails while under federal investigation, he said, all right, I'll let you go free, Hillary, because it'll look bad for the country. So let's just unite. And then they went after him. He should have gone after Hillary, locked her up like he said. It was a promise. I'm going to lock her up. It was a chant. I remember just loving it. Loving it. Every Trump rally I watched in 2015 after school was great. I'd go on YouTube and watch the whole thing. And it was lock her up, lock her. I remember this very well. It was a huge, huge part of why Trump won. He's willing to say, I'm going to lock up my opponent, and I think it's going to look bad, but she committed a crime. And everyone sympathized with that. Everyone resonated with that. But so you have a lot of Republicans that say, don't prosecute. A question to you, what is our justice system if it's not a tool to balance things out? I'm not saying what Trump is doing is literally retribution. He's just making up crimes to level the playing field. But the justice system is the ultimate referee in the country. Their job is to make sure that there's an equal application of the law across the board. But what does it say about the justice system if people in certain positions don't get prosecuted solely because of who they are or the political party they're part of? If a Republican got caught in the FEMA funds scandal that Democrat McCormick got caught in, I would want the Republican to be prosecuted because that's the right thing to do. Because the moment you start viewing justice as something to taint depending on the outcomes you're seeking, then you're screwed. If a major Democrat committed a crime before an election, you should still prosecute them, even though it might appear to the public as though you are trying to lock up your opponent before the election. You should still pursue justice, because justice is the truth, and the truth sets us free. The reason so many of us are still hung up on the justice needed for the 2020 election is because everything proceeds from that. The 4 years under the Biden regime occupying the White House were horrible and tragic. Millions of illegals flooded the country, and you know what? It wouldn't have happened if there was justice, because he would have never gotten in. The 13 soldiers losing their lives in Afghanistan during the withdrawal disaster would not have happened. They would still be here. But they died because of the consequences, the catastrophic consequences of not getting justice after the 2020 election or on the 2020 election. So it's not for the sake of our own endearment, enjoyment, or for appeasing the crowd, appeasing the mob. We're not a mob. We're not screaming out the gates like, prosecute, crucify her, crucify her. We're not Jews in Jesus' time. We're not the Pharisees. Crucify him. No, we're not doing that. What we're asking for is justice. We're asking for the thief to go to jail. We're asking for the treasonous individuals to go to jail. You know, if Republican senators released the video that the 4 Democrat senators recently released, where they encouraged the military to go after the president and ignore his orders by saying unlawful orders, which, by the way, was probably crafted to get them to avoid prosecution, because what they were really asking the military to do was reject and disobey the orders of the president. But if Republicans did that same thing, do you really think they'd be, like, living free? Republicans were spied on. I don't like Lindsey Graham because he's a warmongering piece of crap, but the guy's phone got tapped by Jack Smith. And it's like, that's normal? Really? But I do blame the Republicans, because if they had some guts, they would reform the judiciary, terminate the filibuster, and reform the judiciary. The Constitution empowers Congress with the ability to regulate activities within the judiciary. They can't force the judiciary to rule a specific way, of course not. But they can structure the federal system. I understand why we have lifelong Supreme Court appointments. Totally understand. Because the Supreme Court should be a body that is aristocratic to a certain degree. It should maintain its rulings for a while. We can't keep rotating judicial precedent. We are a common law country in that sense. We need precedent. But I don't get why a federal judge in Colorado needs to be there for a long time. I think they should have maximum 8-year terms or 16-year terms or 10 years. The states do it pretty well. You get to vote. Well, I wouldn't want votes on federal judges either, but a lot of states have to renew their federal judges at the polls. There needs to be a system of accountability for federal judges. I'm not saying what the judge ruled here was unexpected and didn't see it coming at all. I did see it coming. But I'm saying, in general, the federal judges, and the reason this is so unsurprising is because the federal judges are not sympathetic to the Trump administration. Even Trump-appointed judges. We think we're appointing originalists to the federal benches, but we're appointing activists. The judge that ruled Trump couldn't deploy troops in Oregon, in Portland, was a Trump-appointed judge, Judge Emmergott, whatever her name is. A lot of the judges that have made some stupid rulings were appointed by Trump or Reagan or Bush. Actually, ironically, I think Bush gave us a lot of good judges. He gave us some pretty good federal judges. Reagan judges suck. I think 3 of them so far, 2 or 3, have resigned in protest, which, by the way, I welcome, because it literally means Trump gets to fill the vacancy. But it's a disappointing situation to be in, because I've been excited for these prosecutions. I was black-pilled at first, in the first few months of the administration, because I wanted justice. And then I was like, all right, well, patience. But now it's like we're back to square one. We're begging courts to reallow indictments that should have stuck if we just did the right thing, if Pam Bondi just strategized. If she thought ahead. It's a chess game. We're not playing with people who don't know how to play the game. Did we think we'd get away with it? These people study the law, except they just have a horrible satanic interpretation of it. The reason Democrats win so many lawsuits is because they know how to work the system. They know how to talk to the judges. They know how to get Republican judges or conservative judges sympathetic to their causes. That's why we're in this situation in the first place. They know how to manipulate the courts, using the letter of the law while not believing in the letter of the law, using the Constitution while completely disregarding it any chance they get. So strategy is very important. You can't start a chess game playing, G3, Bishop G2, and not know how to continue after that in your opening. You have to prepare. You have to know that your opponent wants to strike in the center and open the game up and put pressure on your king. You have to castle your king and make sure your queen isn't offside in no man's land, staring at pawns and all kinds of pieces. You can't get your queen trapped. We got our queen trapped. We thought we were playing a beautiful game, and then we put our queen in the wrong square. Now look, we look embarrassed right now. I'm embarrassed because I wanted James Comey to go to jail because it would have been good for the country. He committed crimes. I wanted Letitia James to suffer consequences. But now it's like they look like victims. They look like victims because of the mistake. It's like, Pam, I want you to do well. Because if Pam Bondi does well, then the country does well. But I don't think she's cut out for the job. I really don't. I think we would have done with a much better attorney general. You know, Mike Davis. You know, I spoke to him on the phone before the election and I said, I want to promote you as the next attorney general. And he was like, no, I'm not going to be attorney general because I'm not going to get approved. And it's like, what kind of mentality does our side have? Why can't someone like Mike Davis be attorney general of the United States? The viceroy. Why can't he be attorney general? Oh, the Senate won't vote for it. Okay, and they have to vote for it. We force them to. We use political capital. We promise to primary them. Instead, we're spending, what, $40 million on Thomas Massie? Because he's our biggest problem, right? Not the senators who won't vote to approve presidential nominees out of spite, personal grievances. What, we're going to primary MTG, not Tom Tillis? We had to beg Tom Tillis not to rerun for office. This is the problem. And then we get an attorney general in place and she's fumbling. How is this any different from what Bill Barr did? We're set up to fail. And now I'm worried any other indictment we do is just not going to materialize. The fruits are not going to be there. And here's the problem. Are we going to do any other indictments? Because everyone likes to think presidents have 4 years to fulfill their agenda. They really don't. They have like 12 months at most. Because we have something called the midterms. Sometimes I want term limits for Congress. Other times I'm like, man, if they could just be there forever and we didn't have to vote every 2 years, the country would have better continuity. I'm joking when I say that, of course. We do need to vote these people out, right? They do need to be kicked out. We need term limits. But the problem in this country sometimes is we have too many elections, too frequently. So Trump comes in office and he makes these bold promises like deportations, accountability. But you can't necessarily be out here arresting people that appear to be your political opponents during elections. I think Democrats learned that lesson when they arrested Trump and he won by a landslide. It looks like that person becomes the victim, and it looks like the reason you're arresting them is not because they committed a crime, but because they're your opponent. And most voters, if we're being honest here, are low IQ. They're not going to think that deep. They're not going to think about the crimes. They're just going to think about the optics. And so you don't want to do certain things during election cycles. I don't necessarily expect deportation numbers to go crazy, like wild, like 2 million people in 1 year next year, because it's the midterms. We're going to be seeing a lot of footage and a lot of campaign ads that Democrats put out making deportations look like this inhumane thing. But what's funny is the nation supports deportations. They support it. They support all of the controversial policies. They support it. But so you don't necessarily want to be arresting people like 4 months before the midterms. So are we going to get prosecutions, further prosecutions? And if you lose the House, you lose a lot of leverage because now you have to get Democrats to give you some wins legislatively. Are you going to do that while prosecuting half their party? Certainly not. So you really have a year as a president to get the country on your side. And then if you manage to do that and win the midterms, then you can really fulfill your agenda in the last 2 years of your term. You can go crazy. But as of now, Trump has to be careful because he has to think about the future of the MAGA movement. J.D. Vance is the heir apparent, whatever. He's the heir apparent. He's apparently the heir. Do you want to sabotage him by doing certain things, like going too hard, too extreme, creating bad optics? I don't think they're bad optics, but the independent voters that have low IQs and vote on whims, they're certainly not going to like it. And then the Democrats are going to be very energized. And Republicans are low propensity voters, unfortunately. And most Christians are waiting for Jesus to come back, so they don't vote. They don't think it's important to be participatory in the system at all. They think, we're not in the world, even though we technically are. It matters what we do here. If we elect politicians that destroy the place, make people's lives difficult, then we don't fulfill our biblical mandate to serve our neighbors. Serving isn't just, cooking some food and giving it to your sick neighbor. It's praying for them. It's voting in their interest as well as in your interest. But anyways, and then Second Amendment people, they only come out to vote when it's about guns. They're going to feel like, oh, we have a president in the White House. And to be fair, that's how the Democrats feel when they get power. They have a problem energizing their base. I hope it changes. Because as it stands right now, Republicans would lose the midterms if the nation doesn't start to feel that things are moving in the right direction. And the administration has predicted that Q1 and Q2 of next year is going to make people feel that way. If that's true, then that's good. That's a great turnaround, and it would impact the midterms. Like if people start seeing greater tax returns due to the tax cuts, and waiters and waitresses start seeing their tips back, all these tip workers get tips, they're going to start feeling like, okay, cool, we can now believe in this national project. We believe in the country again. I think my mouse just died. I couldn't end this live stream if I wanted to. Okay, give me a second. That's ridiculous. Why did this... It's actually... this charger doesn't come all the way up here. Trump 2028 is happening. Just get used to it. Okay. There are people that will think you're serious. But there is no... Well, I think I was speaking to Q from out of Quentin Q from Out of the Darkness. Not, Wano Sabin, the guy, whatever that whole movement was about. And he said something that was really interesting. He said, and I guess I'd never thought about it like that, but the reason Trump keeps talking about himself like he's going to win in 2028 is because he's trying to take heat off of whoever that next candidate is, whether it's J.D. Vance or someone else. He's just trying to take heat off of them and keep it on himself. And it's like, okay, that actually makes sense. Like, that's why, Trump has come out and said he's not running in 2028 because he's not allowed to. But also, I don't want Trump in politics for, 20 years at that point almost? Come on. Like, he deserves a rest. I think he has done a great job to move us forward from where we were in 2016. In 2016, it was a politically correct country. Now everyone can breathe again, okay? Now everyone's a little more racist, and it's perfect because it's solving all our problems. I told Quentin that Gen Z they're going to say the N-word, but they're not actually racist. And I'm like, yeah, that perfectly describes Gen Z. They're actually the most tolerant generation, but they will have to be racist first. Because, it's just, that was such a funny phone call. But, yeah, Trump probably, touts himself as a 2024 candidate, just to kind of throw it off and make sure no Democrats really know who that successor is. Because I promise you, if Democrats feel that Vance has momentum, if they take the House, God forbid, they're going to want to impeach him. They're going to try at least. They're going to say he did something wrong or he didn't kiss his wife goodnight. Like something. They impeached Trump after he left office in January of 2021. They impeached him. My man was in Florida living his best life, waiting for 2024, and he was getting impeached. He was getting lawfared by Congress. That's how Democrats show their viciousness. And Republicans, well, they take the Senate and they don't bring back the Mayorkas impeachment. They don't hold the trial. That's how shameless Democrats are. Republicans controlled the House under Speaker Mike Johnson, or was it Kevin McCarthy at that point, and they impeached Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary. And the Senate Democrats who controlled it, Chuck Schumer, just said, "Oh, we're not going to bring it to trial," even though the Constitution says there shall be a trial in the Senate. The Senate just said no. And "shall" is a binding word. It's not should. It's shall, like must. Someone said, "Well, Commander John says, well, I will vote for Trump in 2028 GOP primaries." Okay. Well, I really don't. Apparently, George Bush and the whole Bush family, they're trying to angle themselves. That's kind of a scary thing to me, man. That's kind of scaring me a little bit. George Bush and that whole family trying to take power by angling themselves. That actually kind of scares me because they, believe it or not, they still have a tremendous amount of influence with the establishment GOP. Like there are still establishment creatures that align themselves with Bush Republicanism. And that is a scary concept if we're seeing George Bush and that dynasty come back. Certainly Jeb Bush isn't going to be at the forefront of it, but I think there was another Bush that was running for office somewhere. They're going to lose, of course, but it's not like a foregone conclusion that they don't have the ability to grab the GOP because they have a lot of donors. And, the donors now, the donor class that donated to Trump, a lot of them did it out of circumstance. They knew that Kamala Harris would be so much worse. Some of them just still hate Trump. They don't like him. They don't like his politics. They don't like his rhetoric, even though his policies benefited them. They don't like him at all. They think that someone like him is bad for the Overton window because Trump changed what it meant to be a Republican. He made it an America First party. He made it like he changed the foreign policy consensus within the GOP. Now, if you're marginally aligned with any foreign country, you're getting criticized. It's like a point of criticism. Before Trump, Lindsey Graham was seen as the ideal Republican. After Trump, Lindsey Graham looks like, what are you? Like there's now been, if that's one of the strongest things Trump did, which is create a distinction between himself and what we knew before, what was there before. So but yeah, let's see what happens with these prosecutions. But it's disappointing that we didn't strategize, and these dismissals they sting. Man, I've just been annoyed about it the whole day. Fire Pam. Pam Bondi has the opportunity to prove herself. She's in a pretty strong position politically because it's hard to get an attorney general approved in the Senate. So, knowing that, hold on, I gotta sneeze. Give me a second. Yeah, knowing how hard it is to get anything approved by the Senate should be a motivator to her to know she won't get fired immediately. So she should try her very best to reconcile that relationship with voters at large. Don't trust blonde. Even though that's a joke, I don't like that kind of humor. I don't like it. Because I think humor should have, you know, like it's like a weird statement to make. All F4, someone said. Um, Wait, that's literally to close. Hire General Flynn as the Attorney General. General Flynn doesn't have a law license. I'd like General Flynn to be the National Security Advisor. Yeah. But I don't think General Flynn wants a job right now. The DOJ needs to give him his money because they went after him for years. They need to settle that case, make him rich. And I don't mind it, even though it's tax dollars. The government shouldn't be coming after a private citizen who served America honorably as a general. Yeah, they shouldn't be doing that. So they better pay him up. But yeah, I met General Flynn in. Wait, when did I meet him? Oh, it was last year. Yeah, Amfest last year. Really nice guy. Really nice guy. He. Well, he follows me on X, but he follows like 50 million other people, so I thought he didn't know who I was. But he actually did, and we spoke about election integrity and all these different things. It was hard to meet him because he was like in a different section. Like there's VIP and then there's VIP, 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 like nearly backstage. Was that the same day I met Charlie Kirk? It must have been. Or was it the day after? Or I think it was the day before. Yeah, I met General Flynn and then I met Charlie Kirk. And to me, General Flynn has been like a hero to me because I remember him being like one of the first mainstream people to back Trump's campaign and to go under tremendous pressure and get lawfared and get lied on. Mike Pence pushed General Flynn out of that first administration. And who's to say if General Flynn had not stayed put, Trump would have restructured the intelligence apparatus much better, and the 2020 election would not have happened the way it did. I genuinely believe that. General Flynn was a very important voice. I mean, he was like Obama's director or Defense Intelligence Agency director, but he was in that position not because he was like aligned with Obama, but because he was a Democrat, to be fair. Yeah, he was a Democrat. That was kind of the whole point. General Flynn was a Democrat who became a Republican because of Trump. And so that's what makes him unique. And I think there's something to be said about someone who went through their entire life so accomplished, part of a specific party, and then to come out and say, you know what, we were wrong. Our side is wrong, and I think you should support Donald Trump. Like, I think he was one of the best Trump picks in his first term in the White House, and then he was literally removed from his position like 3 weeks after, which is disgusting. So, and then we had McMaster, right? Oh man, do you guys remember? Oh, McMaster, right? You guys remember that guy? I think he was the guy that. Ah, no, was it McMaster? Or am I remembering correctly? Was it HR like McMaster? Who came in after General Flynn? Oh, yes, it was. Ugh, I remember him. Yeah, the swamp took General Flynn out, but it is what it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I'm trying to pick up my pen. There's nothing better than going to a bank and just taking all their pens. Because they're going to charge me all this interest. I might as well get some pens out of it. Eric Schmidt would make a good AG. Now we're talking. That's a great suggestion from Dan. Yeah, Eric Schmidt single-handedly or dual-handedly with Jeff Landry out in Louisiana took down big tech. They took down the Biden regime. They exposed the censorship. They exposed the operation. And that ultimately led to all of us getting allowed back on YouTube. So, forever grateful to the Missouri v. Biden case and the victory that it led to. Yeah, Eric Schmidt is currently a senator. Not sure if he wants to step down and, not be part of that body anymore. I don't think it's fair to the people of Missouri. We could have even done with Eric Bailey, who succeeded Eric Schmidt. Eric Bailey of Missouri, he was on the list, or Andrew Bailey rather. Sorry about that. Sorry. Andrew Bailey, he's currently he works as a co-deputy director of the FBI right now. I don't know why that's an upgrade though, because you're the Attorney General of Missouri. He won the election, and then he stepped down to go work at the FBI as a co-deputy director. So he's serving with Dan Bongino, so he has a pretty important role. I mean, deputy directors usually run the organization, and then the actual director is just the face of it. But I think he would do well as an attorney general because he's still a lawyer, a very talented one, and he got a lot of victories. I don't want conservatives from major states. I want fighters from the Fifth Circuit. I think what we need right now as an attorney general, if Pam Bondi's not in, is you need to find a federal judge, get that federal judge to resign from the Fifth Circuit, and then make him attorney general. Because we need someone who understands the judiciary. You need an attorney general that thinks like a judge. That's how we're going to win these cases. I mean, yeah, there are some like good people at the DOJ right now. Yeah, there's good people. I think Harmeet Dillon, she and I had some beef, but we squashed it. I went viral on X because I said we shouldn't be praying to Wahaguru at the RNC. And, me and Harmeet, she'd always promoted my tweet. We don't have any bad blood, but we had some beef then. Because, you're at the GOP. And we need Trump to win. You can't be praying to Indian pagan gods or whatever. But yeah, no, she completely understood where I was coming from, which is hilarious. So I commend her for allowing that level of free speech. And it's funny because other people got angrier at that tweet than she did. But, we don't have any beef. We don't have any beef. She's cool. But with Harmeet Dillon at the Civil Rights Division, she's going after states for their voter rolls, protecting voting integrity. So, yeah, I think Harmeet, that's a good example of someone doing something important. Who else is at the DOJ? The former attorney for Huntington Beach, Michael, his name's escaping me, Michael something. Hey, great guy. Yeah, great frickin' guy. So he was U.S. attorney, well, not U.S. attorney, just the attorney for the city, an elected attorney. So it's an office you get voted in for, in Huntington Beach, California. How do you say that? Huntington, whatever it is. He was the city's attorney, which is a pretty sizable area with a substantial, beautiful location. I mean, it's in the LA metro. And he was constantly suing Gavin Newsom. The city passed an ordinance to allow voter ID, and he defended that ordinance in court against Newsom. My phone's ringing again. You guys could hear that, right? This weird ringtone. Yeah. So he's at the DOJ. Not sure if it's the same unit as Harmeet Dillon, but he is one of the smartest lawyers I've ever talked to. he and I were strategizing how to break the news out of California. He would send me the message and then I'd just structure it. But yeah, very happy for him. He actually he texted me like after telling his family. He was like, "Hey, you're the first person I'm telling this, but I just got appointed to the DOJ." And I was like, why are you telling me? I don't know you like that." But yeah, that was cool. He's a great guy. So yeah, we have a lot of good people in the DOJ, but we need a better leader, and I wouldn't mind having one. Paxton 2026. Oh yeah, Ken Paxton. You know, another Twitter has helped me meet everybody in politics. Ken Paxton and I spoke, and I was going to fly to his office in Austin, and we were going to do an in-person show or like an interview. I wasn't on YouTube last year, but it was before the election, and I wanted to get like viral clips of him saying, as Texas Attorney General, he was going to defend the elections across the country, and if he saw any fraud or anything, he would have defended it. But it never materialized, and me and his team, we set it up to meet again at AmFest and do our interview. And I think he had to rush out of there very quickly. And I planned on going to his hotel room and everything. And I was like, man, this looks like a Diddy situation. I got to step out. And I was like, all right, well, it's not going to happen. But I'd probably, when primary season comes in, I want to make content surrounding Paxton. Well, when he wins that primary. And I get Wesley Hunt is a good congressman, but why can't he just stay in Congress or run for governor of Texas after Abbott? And I don't like recycling politicians. I know, I'd prefer if they just all retired, but we are in this current system. We need name recognition. Hunt is basically primarying Cornyn, but Paxton it's like Paxton, Wesley Hunt, and then John Cornyn. It's like, why can't we just not do this? Why can't, I think it is Paxton's turn. I don't like that, I don't like that way of putting it, but it is like, yeah, he's, 62 years old, not too old, has been an excellent attorney general in Texas, and he thinks the Senate is that next step up. Why not? Why not let it happen? It is what it is, man. But I hate to see like Wesley Hunt. That guy has the craziest handshake I've ever felt. My gosh, he squashed my little hand. Oh, these are big hands. No, he squashed my hands, man. When I was like, dang, like I thought I shook people's hands with strength. This guy just ripped. But yeah, it was. I told him, I was like, man, that's the strongest handshake I've ever seen. So, oh my gosh. Tom Fighton. Tom Fighton's a great warrior for election integrity. Paxton is awesome here in Texas. Yeah, great guy. Great patriot. I mean, that's another one that could be an attorney general. Yeah, Ken Paxton could be a really good attorney general because he understands the system perfectly. But I think, again, the Senate will fight tooth and nail to prevent his confirmation. It's like the fact that we even have to say that just proves how broken the Senate is whenever Republicans are in control. But, anyways, just wanted to rant here real quick. Let's go ahead and pray. God, we pray for justice. We ask you to deliver justice to every situation, to equal those scales, that scale of justice, and make sure all the judges, all the prosecutors do the right thing and actually give us accountability. In Jesus' name, amen. GOP, what a joke. Yep. But don't worry, they'll be begging us to vote for them next year. So They'll promise all kinds of things, but probably do none of them. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to run. Thank you all very much for watching. We're back tomorrow with regular videos, I think. No, I have a dental appointment. No, we should be back. But yeah. All right. Good night.